Today, we're continuing our conversation on creating a classroom of problem solvers. And this episode is going to be all about something small that creates big shifts in math classrooms. And that's the first strand of the answer to what do I need to do to create a classroom of problem solvers? The first strand is thinking routines. You might call them warm-ups or number talks, number sense routines, math talks, things like which one doesn't belong, alike and different, notice and wonder, choral counting, number of the day, all of those are thinking routines. And they can completely change the feel of your classroom. Not because they're cute, not because they're the perfect way to start the classroom, both are true, but because they teach students something so important. In this classroom, your ideas matter. And that message matters a lot. Thinking routines are part of the creating classrooms of problem solvers framework that I've been talking about, and I want to break it down for you. Last week, we talked about those 6 strands and how they can all fit in your math block. But I wanted to show you an image because for our visual learners, that might help a lot. Take a look at my Canvas screen. This is a friendship bracelet, and this is what we're going to use to help us think about creating a classroom of problem solvers. When we start to braid a friendship bracelet, we start with 1 or 2 strands, and then we add in another and another. And as our braid continues to grow, we might add in another strand. And when we're feeling confident, we might add in more strands. And that's exactly how I want you to think about the 6 strands of creating a classroom of problem solvers. Because we don't start with all 6 at once, right? That would be overwhelming. Instead, we can build this bracelet slowly over time, adding in a little bit over time. Now, your bracelet is going to look different than mine because we have different scenarios, personalities, students in our class, conditions. There's no one right way to build the bracelet, but there are those essentials, which are the 6 strands. And today we're diving into the first one, which is thinking routines. So you can think about thinking routines like this coral strand over here on the left, and that's what we're going to start with. Okay, because thinking routines are my favorite way to start. Sometimes teachers see warm-ups as something to settle the students down or to review or something like real quick before the real math starts. But thinking routines are the real math because these routines help students practice things like noticing patterns, sharing their reasoning, justifying, listening to each other, comparing ideas. And while they're doing that, they're building flexibility and fluency, and they're getting used to talking about their math ideas. Thinking routines are low floor opportunities for students to enter the mathematical conversation confidently. And what I mean by that is low floor, right? You don't have to take a big step to get into the math. It's easy to just cross that threshold. There's almost no bump or step to get into it. And you can enter that conversation by saying, I notice, or 37 is made up of 3 10s, and I see those 10s in the picture, right? Whatever it is, the student can share and be confident in their idea. This matters especially at the beginning of the year because before students can explain their strategies, let's say during word problem workshop, or reason or justify more in depth, they need those smaller opportunities to share, to hear their classmates think, to learn how to disagree respectfully, and to build confidence. Thinking routines build the culture that makes rich problem solving possible later in the class and later in the school year. So this is an essential as we're creating that classroom of problem solvers. Let me tell you something though I notice in almost all classrooms that I go in. I see students thinking that math is about speed, answers, getting it right quickly, or following the steps. Thinking routines kind of completely interrupt that story that our students have about what math is. Because suddenly math becomes now about noticing and wondering and comparing and discussing and convincing. And that's the huge shift that we're going for. Students who might struggle in math class and where maybe like a word problem or a complex grapple task is difficult for them, this thinking routine is going to give them that quick win and build their confidence right off the bat. Let me tell you a story about Brady. Brady had low confidence in math, rarely shared. He was often confused, defeated, kind of just sat in the back, did his thing, but really wasn't an active participant. He really did think that he was bad at math until his teacher started consistently using thinking routines. He started to shine during thinking routines. Like he was able to share his ideas without the pressure of like being right. And he didn't have to write his ideas down. So that kind of gave him the freedom to share his ideas, knowing that there wasn't any one right answer. That freed him of this idea that he had about himself as a mathematician. And then it gave his teacher a really great view into his math thinking. And over time, his confidence started to grow. And in a matter of just a few weeks, he was more engaged in all parts of math. And we think it's because of those thinking routines. It's those moments that matter so much to kids in math, right? Because a classroom of problem solvers is built on math identity, on believing that you have ideas that are worth sharing in the classroom. Students have to experience themselves as a math thinker before they believe that they're a math thinker. So as you reflect on this and hear this, I want you to think about like what opportunities are you giving your students to be successful math thinkers. Now let's talk about what these routines look like. We can talk about maybe like a few of my favorites. One of them is which one doesn't belong. I've had which one doesn't belong resources on my Teachers Pay Teachers since 2020. I've been using these with my students since then. It was hugely engaging when we were teaching online, but I've continued to use them because I saw how engaging they were. What it is it's 4 images or anything really. It's 4 things. And students decide which image, number, representation doesn't belong. And then they have to defend their reasoning. And the magic is that there's no single right answer. And students realize that like, it's not about picking which one doesn't belong. There's no right answer. It's about reasoning, not guessing what the teacher wants, but backing up your ideas. I also love Notice and Wonder. It's really just something that I learned from expeditionary learning, which way back 15, 18 years ago was something we would do about books, about, a bird skeleton, a feather. During our bird expedition, we would use this idea of notice and wonder. And what I like about it so much in math and everything really is that it gets us to slow down, to get curious, and to really look at something and be precise. We couldn't just say, I see a bird when we were looking at a bird for notice and wonder. We had to get curious, look closely. I used to say, use your turtle eyes, go slow. And the same is true in math, giving students a picture or, a representation, maybe some math manipulatives that are intentionally set out in a certain configuration and asking students to notice about it, wonder about it. It's one of the best ways to launch a discourse because every student can enter the conversation by saying something that they see. Now, choral counting is the third routine I wanted to share with you, which is one that I actually like to do as what I call count around the circle, where we don't all count together. We can, but I like to go around the circle, having students noticing patterns, building patterns in number sense. And so we might count up by 5 starting at 7, or count back by 1/2 starting at 13. Students begin to see structures in our counting, patterns in our operations, place value relationships, and that repeated reasoning. And because we're counting together, we're choral counting, students feel safe in participating. And the best part is you keep a visual record of the count up on your slide or on your whiteboard. And after the count is over, you go back and you compare that with a notice and wonder about the patterns and the things that the students are noticing with the numbers. All right, I have so many that I could talk about, but I'm going to talk about like 2 more. Number of the day is the easiest thinking routine you could do. You basically just help students represent numbers in flexible ways. They could use drawings, equations, decompose the numbers to make different equations. They could draw models. That is the flexibility piece of seeing numbers as in lots of different ways. You just slap a number up on the board and students represent it in as many ways as they can. What about how many? Have you done this one before? Christopher Danielson has some super compelling books called How Did You Count and How Many? We'll link them in the show notes and on my blog, monamath.com/podcast. You can go to all of the Math Chat podcast episodes and all the links are there. And everything's written up as a blog post. So if you'd rather read than listen, you can go check that out. The routine for How Many is where you show a picture, a real life picture, and ask students to count. And there might be lots of different ways that they can quantify the picture, thinking about different units or different configurations, or they might be counting different things within the picture. This routine develops questioning, curiosity, flexibility, starting to look around them at their world in a mathy way. And of course, helps us have a rich discussion because it's so lively, because students are comparing their ideas and thinking about others' thinking. If you haven't seen one of Christopher Danielson's books, go check out those links for sure. But I want to caution you with the mistake that I often see teachers make. It's that we rush them. We rush these thinking routines. We turn them into kind of a little mini lesson, or just like a quick review, right? And where we're just trying to get it done. The value in these are in the discussion. The pause matters. The wondering matters. The student ideas matter. And what I want you to think about is this is an opportunity to get a little glimmer into your students' thinking. Inside of the Word Problem Workshop book, I actually show how, I tell stories of how teachers are using discussions to assess students' thinking. So I want you to, if you have the book, you can check that out. But hold on, let's scratch all of that. Teachers often think, oh, I already do warm-ups. But the goal is not to do the warm-up. The goal is to facilitate the thinking. That's the shift that I hope you leave this podcast with. Now, how can you start using them? It's simple. You don't need a lot of stuff. You can do one routine a day, 5 to 7 minutes, and just consistently implement it. You can use the routines and warm-ups that are in your curriculum, or you can create them yourself. Most importantly, though, talk less. Ask more questions. What do you notice? What makes you say that? Who sees this differently? Can someone build on that idea? And then listen. Students will surprise you. Now, if you're like, I want to start this, but I don't know how, I've got you. At the beginning, or at the end of the summer, all K-5 will be ready. What we will have is a year-long slide pack of thinking routines for you. So what you will be able to do is just pull open month 1 slide and grab that and start. And we'll have all the months of the school year in there for you. So if you want a little sample of these thinking routines, you can go to monamath.com/thinking routines, and you'll be able to grab a sample there. You'll see some images, put your name and email in, and then it'll do a email to you, but it'll also do a forced Google slide copy for you. And you can fully edit those and use them in the first week of school if you'd like. The real goal of thinking routines is not stronger number sense only. It's stronger mathematical identity. Think about that. Building number sense and math identity, what could be better? In 5 minutes, students start to think, I can contribute to this class. My thinking matters. I can make sense of math. That's the foundation of a classroom of problem solvers. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, yes, I want this in my classroom, I want you to know that these routines are exactly the kinds of practices that we build inside of Word Problem Workshop. The book is going to help you understand the philosophy, the routine and structure of Word Problem Workshop, and the teacher moves to get a discussion going. The online teacher training course for Word Problem Workshop helps you see Word Problem Workshop in action. So if that's something that you know you're a visual learner, you need the classroom videos, and the implementation support and the examples across grade levels, you can check out the teacher training at monamath.com/WPW teacher training. Because classrooms of problem solvers aren't built through one big curriculum lesson. They're built through consistent opportunities for students to think every single day. And so here's the thing, take your curriculum lesson, use it, but use it strategically, and start your lesson with a thinking routine. So when you go into that big, juicy curriculum lesson, your students already have the confidence that they can do it. And let me leave you with this, my friend. May you create a small daily opportunity for your students to notice and wonder, discuss, and see themselves as mathematical thinkers. May you remember that warm-ups and thinking routines are not just activities to fill the time, but they're opportunities to build confidence, curiosity, and community. And may you trust that the conversations, the pauses, and the moments of reasoning that you nurture each day are helping students develop the habits of real problem solvers. Until next week, where we're going to dive all the way into the next strand. See you then.